What's up, YouTube? This is Traveling Tony. We are at Jackie's Salad. I came here before, but it was a while ago. I wanted Jay Focus to try this restaurant. It's a really good restaurant, kind of a local place. I'll show you the outside too. I've been here before a couple years ago with my wife, but I wanted to, get out and show him so he can see it. Trying to have him understand Tanzania a lot better, even though it's his first time. I try to be a good friend slash guide, and yeah. So let me show you guys the place a little bit. That's it. What's going on, YouTube? It's Traveling Tony with my boy Jay Focus.
Yes, sir.
He's always reminding you to what?
Stay focused.
Hey, stay focused. Focus is very important, guys. No matter what you do, you want to focus on it. That's how you accomplish a task to your best of your abilities, by focusing on what you're doing. But today, actually, I just thought about this. I wanted to talk about language barrier, living in these other nations, not understanding the local language, not having any clue about it. Even if you know a little bit, you still have no clue. Like, if you know 5 words, you don't know anything, right? You need to know at least 100 words to say you have an understanding of the language. 20 words, not enough. You need to know the conjugated version of the word and everything. And so if you could just say, I'm going to walk, but you can't say I'm currently walking, or I walked earlier, past tense, then you don't know.
You need to put some work in.
Yeah, you gotta put work in. You gotta put work in. So how was it living with the language barrier for you in other countries, and where did you face? Well, actually, how about we go living with the language barrier first? Yeah.
Okay, so if you guys don't know me from my channel, I'm Jay Focused. I'm a world traveler extraordinaire, if you want to call me that. I will tell you that I've been to over 80 countries in the world. In Africa, I'm around 18, 19 countries right now. And so I'm going to speak more towards Africa because most places in the world I've gone to, the language barrier isn't that much if you're an English speaker. Now, if you're an English, Spanish, bilingual speaker, you are so good, man. That will take you over almost anywhere that you would want to be. Now, it's not going to help you in the Middle East so much, but in general, those 2 languages are going to be a very strong foundation. Now, things change up a little bit when you get to Africa, right? So you have many parts of Africa where English is going to get you quite far. I will say that so far, out of the countries I've been to in Africa and honestly the world, the country that had the highest language barrier, bar none, is Madagascar. In Madagascar, English is way down here. It's like our language, French, everything else is down here. English might as well be German. They don't care about either language over there. Of course, you're dealing with the elite, the super educated, but generally speaking, just being an English only speaker is not going to get you far there. So to me, that was the highest challenge that I dealt with, language barrier wise. Now, the lowest would probably be South Africa on the continent, because it's just like you're in Canada, right? That's how much their English is Americanized, how much slang they know, how much they watch North American music and videos, etc., Twitter, all our social media, they are living it in South Africa. So there, if you want to feel like you're back home, that's the place, 0 language barrier. Now, after that, I would say Kenya is going to be the next one, because especially big city Kenya, Nairobi, the English is very native level, slight British tint to it, certain words and things they'll say be a little more British leaning, but it's mixed because they consume a lot of American stuff too. So both places, almost 0 language barrier. Madagascar on the opposite extreme. In the middle, I would say it's probably Ethiopia or Rwanda. Those are in the middle. They were never British colonies. Yes, the young people, they're learning English now, but the levels that you're going to encounter are going to be very different. One person you're going to speak to and be like, oh, everyone speaks English here very well. Then the next person will be like, I don't speak English at all. So all in the same day, all in the same neighborhood can happen in those 2 countries. So I'd say those are like medium language barrier difficulty.
So, okay. You mentioned Nairobi, right? So where would you rate Kampala? Because I thought they spoke English pretty well in Kampala.
Kampala's good.
Kampala's good.
Kampala would lean, it's definitely after Nairobi, just due to the thickness of their accent. So sometimes they'll be speaking normal English, but their accent will be so thick that if you've never been around a lot of non-native speakers, you're not going to get everything right away. Now, after about a week, yeah, you'll be like, okay, I understand everybody fine. But if it's your first time in Africa or your first time around people with very thick accents, Uganda will be a little challenging, but it's still English at the end of the day. Versus some of these other places where their schooling was not in English. They had a few English lessons, but their actual daily classes were not in the English language.
So, actually, you probably gonna make me change my title now. I'm thinking about this.
Okay.
Where do you recommend someone first time in Africa? Since you've been to over 14 countries in Africa, right?
Over 18.
Over 18, almost 20 countries in Africa.
Coming up on 20.
Coming up on 20. He's gonna hit
By
it.
the time you watch this video, it might be 20.
It might be 20. It might be 20. It's probably gonna be at least 19 by the time they see this, for sure. So, where would you recommend for someone?
First time.
First time in Africa.
First timer, are they dolo? Are they in a group?
Let's say dolo, right?
Okay.
Dolo.
If they're fully dolo and they're coming from the West, all they speak is English.
All it speaks English.
And they want the lowest barrier, the places I mentioned, it's going to be South Africa and Kenya. Those are going to be the easiest.
Let's just not say only English. Let's say also they're ignorant to the possibility that another way of life might be better. So they're only used to the Western way of life, and that's it. They're not even interested in diving into anything else different from the West.
Then just like I said, those two places
There we
are
go.
perfect, man. That sound, I mean, it's beginner mode.
Beginner mode.
Beginner mode. You got training wheels on. All your cards are going to work. You're probably never going to have a power outage. Never going to have a water outage. Probably. Now, South Africa, I will say, you have to make sure you're in a place with a generator. But if you're this guy who's not so well traveled, I would say odds are you're going to spend a little bit more to make sure that you're in a nicer place that does have those conveniences, and then you have nothing to worry about. Then you can just relax like you're back home.
That's a good point. And also, since he brought up another great point, cutting corners could put you in a situation where you're actually having to deal with language communication issues.
Very true. So I would say in Africa more than anywhere else in the world, you need to spend a little bit more to get that Western standard and for things to just be smoother. Now, if you're more adventurous, if you've got more time, if you're just more flexible, I would say, then you could save a couple dollars and you don't have to spend as much for the nicest neighborhood in the country. You don't have to spend as much for the nicest, newest building with the generator and things like that. You have to know yourself and what your goals are. If you're like, look, I work in Chicago, I work in Atlanta, I work in LA, I got 8 days to travel. I want it to be easy mode, I want it to be smooth, I don't want to have to think, I don't want to have to do any like currency conversions really. I want it to just be like I'm at home, but with better environment, right? Better people to be around. Then those two places I mentioned all day, as long as you come correct as far as like spending a little bit more for accommodations, you're not gonna have any issues, none.
So let's say somewhere like Madagascar. How did you get over the hurdle of the language barrier?
Well, it's very advanced because, like I told you, when I went to Madagascar, I was already probably 71 countries deep into traveling. So I had been traveling for over 10 years. Okay. You know what I'm saying? So because of that, I had a lot of confidence in my ability to navigate different situations, deal with things like power outages and currency issues and things not working like they're supposed to. It was gradual, you know, it's kind of like you have to walk before you can run. Like if you just start running from crawling, you already know how that's gonna turn out, right?
For a little
yeah, all day. You're gonna land on your face. So even with my experience, it was frustrating at times, like to the point where I was just like, I would rather not deal with this. I would rather be somewhere where they're gonna meet me halfway, like in Ethiopia or a Rwanda, versus every little thing is challenging all the time.
Okay, that's very interesting because language barrier is something that a lot of travelers, especially expats who've been doing this for years, had to deal with. When I was first going to Asia, I didn't speak Japanese or any of the Asian languages, so I had to learn how to live with these people not speaking their language. And the translator is a big help. Now that we have these new phones or whatever, but
Sure.
what you guys should realize too, sometimes what you type in the translator doesn't always come out
That's
the way you want
important.
it.
That's important.
So
Because the translators, they've improved a lot from when they first started, but they're still nowhere near native. And sometimes they're too literal. Sometimes they just don't understand and they give their best guess. So don't think that, oh, I got this thing in my pocket, now I'm as good as a fluent person, or they're gonna understand me 100% of the time. No, sometimes they'll just like look at you. I've seen some really strange translations that I know are wrong in Spanish and in other languages, and I'm like, if I would have said this, oh my God, like,
yeah,
it wouldn't have helped the situation at all.
it could be very embarrassing. You know, I've typed some stuff in, and then I've had the person give me the look like, what the hell is this? And then all I did was switch it back from the language to English, and I'm like, whoa, I didn't say that. You know, whoa, this turned my words all the way around.
Absolutely, it can completely change the meaning of something. Like, I'm trying to think of a perfect example. But yeah, just know that it's not the same, and you have to do your due diligence, especially if you're going to be in a place long term. If you're just sliding through, you got to do what you can do. But long term, it's the only way. It's not even a choice. You're going to limit yourself so much if you're living in a place and you don't understand 90% of what's going on around you.
Would you say they are helpful in countries? What would you say they were the least helpful with the language barrier?
The least helpful?
The least helpful.
That's a good question. Well, I'll say here in Tanzania.
Okay.
I'm not saying they're the least helpful, but I would say here,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't speak Swahili, they don't want to deal with you most of the time. Like, especially like taxi drivers. I mean, maybe like 1 out of 10, you'll get one who like they actually want to converse with you if you don't speak Swahili. But the majority, after like 20 seconds, they realize you don't speak it. That's it.
Stop talking.
Yeah, they're done. They're not gonna try and meet you halfway now.
Because it sucks. At that point, you're playing charades. You know, like you're like the dog, woof woof, and you're trying to give them like, what? What is a dog? You know, like they don't know.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe they actually know it, but they just don't want to speak it. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's say they speak it at a 5th grade level,
Right.
and I speak Swahili at a 0th grade level, right?
Right.
Them attempting it may not even be worth it for them. They might be like, I'm not getting extra money. Why should I even try to speak it?
I agree with that. Also because they are afraid of how they sound in their English because they don't use it. So you know they're busting out English that they learned, and they haven't spoken a word of English in like 3 years. You know, because everybody you talk to speaks Swahili. So I get that, and then also it's how we speak. Because sometimes we're like, hey bro, I need to go to here, da, da, da. So the way they say Americans speak English is like, they make fun of us like the cartoons. They're like, blah, 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 blah. That's how we speak. They say we're speaking too fast. But that's how we hear other languages as well.
You know what this reminds me too? There was a girl the other day, she was making fun of the way I said water.
Yeah, me too.
And I've been making fun of them too, so it goes back and forth.
Water. Yeah, we say water. And they don't like that. They be like, water? What's that? Water. They always make me say it. I'm like, okay.
Funny. And just to bring it back around, I'm sure, you know, knowing that mostly men are watching this channel,
Right.
how have language, like the language barrier affected you with women around the world? Because that's probably something I want to hear.
Yeah, so I would say English speaking, for my English speakers, a place with English speaking women is going to be your best bet to having a real organic relationship, right? So East Africa, we know they speak English enough. It may not be perfect, but they at least conversational level, whoop-de-whoop. Maybe you can't talk about Beyonce's last performance or whatever, but I don't care about stuff like that, right? But you're able to say, oh, I'm hungry, I'm not hungry, I want to go here, I want to go there, I'm tired, I'm not tired, this bed is comfortable,
How was your day?
How was your day? You know, oh, I had a terrible day, this person, they can express themselves and you can understand. Now, let's go to like Brazil, Portuguese speaking place. It's harder to have an organic relationship if you don't speak Portuguese. So I would say for the guys looking for love, start off in an English speaking place if you don't know another language. If you know another language, then you could go to wherever you know.
Sure.
But if you don't know another language, it's best to start off in a place where they at least have some semblance of an understanding of English. Don't need to be perfect, but you need to be something.
Yeah, and the only exception is if you're one of those language, I don't even know the right term, but people that a language just comes to them naturally, or they're very focused, back to me, and they stick with one language like obsessively, because that's how I learned Spanish. That was my first foreign language that I learned, and I learned it primarily in the States. Now, of course, being in Latin America, I got to test drive what I learned, but the building blocks I learned in the States and not in the classroom on my own, because I was that passionate about learning. But the vast majority of people are not going to be that passionate. So his advice applies to the vast majority, that you should start somewhere where you can hit the ground from day one communicating with people. Now, to bring the question back to me, as far as traveling, have language barriers affected how I've interacted with women? Do I have any stories about missing a woman because I couldn't speak her language? I'll give you guys, it's happened many times, but I remember just this year, I was in Ethiopia and I was walking down the street, and some people say I look Ethiopian, some people say I don't. I don't know where I fall on the fence of that. You tell me what you think, right? But sure enough, 2 Ethiopian women stopped me on the street, college age, and they were like, kind of, where are you from? Trying to meet me, right? This is broad daylight in the center of the city, right? And they were trying to speak to me in their language. They thought I was a local, okay? So they thought I was a local, right? They were really disappointed when they found out I could not communicate with them. And it made things so much harder. They still slid me the number, you know what I'm saying? But it could only go so far, because not only are we dealing with a cultural gap, we're also dealing with a language gap. And culture and language, they're like peanut butter and jelly, you know what I mean? I know that's corny, but they go together, man. They're stuck to each other. You can't pry them apart. So, so that was one incident where, let's say I had been living in Ethiopia for a year. I would be studying the language if I was there that long. And, you know, I would have been able to bag that girl in that situation, you know what I'm saying? Because I would have enough. I wouldn't be fluent, but I would have enough to get me through. I can give you guys another situation. I was in Japan. Now, I don't speak Japanese fluently, but I know some words. I know enough to say, you know, my name, where I'm from, numbers, basic things, right? And there was a certain nightclub. Now, I don't know how much you guys know about Japan, but in Japan, they're actually allowed to discriminate, and it's open. It's not like in America where they'll lie and they'll say, I don't like your shoes, come back. I don't like your jeans, come back. Do this, come back, when really they know it's capped. Because when you come back, they'll say, oh, we're full now. You know what I'm saying? So they just don't want you in there because of who you are, not what you're doing, right? In Japan, if they don't want you to come in because of who you are, they will tell you, like, no, it's not for you. Whether you're white, black, whatever, you're not Japanese. Well, language and culture can open doors. So there was a club I was trying to get into, and like I told you guys, I'm not fluent, but I was very respectful. I said the Japanese I knew, I said, you know, hey, I'm learning, I speak a little bit. He said, okay, you're good. The other guys would just walk up and say, hey man, it's my first time here, can I come into the club? They would have been like, nah, Japanese only, you know, bow to you, you know. So I'm not saying it's right, but I'm just saying it's realistic. I don't want to give you guys some pie in the sky stuff. I'm telling you what I've actually seen in the real world. I remember the same thing. I was in Central America one time, and this was kind of funny because it was the opposite situation. So I pulled up with a friend of mine, another Black American from the States, and I pulled up to the door and I spoke Spanish to him. And he's like, no, like, we're full, estamos llenos, right? And so I start walking away, and I say to my boy who doesn't speak Spanish and English, I'm like, yo, they're not letting us in. And he's like, oh, they're Americans. And he's like, oh, you guys can come in. So it's just funny, man. Language really changes your perception. Sometimes it's for the good, sometimes it's for the bad. And you just gotta kind of play around with it. But it's good to have options, because had I only had one language, or like had I been English only in Japan, I wouldn't have got into that club. Now, had I known some at heart, I would have gotten with the Ethiopian girl. And there's situations like that in every country. So it is, it's nice to have in your back pocket. And like I said, a little bit goes a long way, so do not get discouraged if you only can master 50 words, you know, in the first couple weeks, first month or whatever. As long as you're making progress, it's gonna work out for you. Relax, enjoy.
No, that's good points, man. That's good points. Yeah, you guys make sure you learn the language if you go in these places. It is very important. You can actually understand what people are saying about you in passing, because, you know, people don't realize this, but sometimes, yes, people do talk shit about you in another language, and you're not even realizing it. They might be like, oh, you know, in Spanish, but oh, sucio or some shit like that. You don't know what that means. You know, you're like, oh man, and they're just laughing, going back and forth about your body, whatever it is, body odor, whatever. So, especially if you're gonna be dating, you got the hot chick or whatever, you know, got some guys across and they're snickering and they're saying something in a different language. By you having an understanding, you could nip that shit in the bud, versus, you know, they're talking.
And you out of the loop.
You out of the loop, and you're like, your girl's getting sad, and you're like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And that's it, they're talking shit. She's with the gringo. Yep. They don't like the fact that she's with a
Gaijin, gringo, French, Muzungu. They got words for you no matter where you go. If you ain't from there, they got something to call you. Another thing I will add too, where the language barrier is very important, is potential hustlers. They will smell the fact that you don't know the language or you're not comfortable in the language. And we're talking about from the airport taxi to the young brother with no shoes on the street. Everybody who hears you speaking something foreign and you can't spit back to them their language as well, they're like, okay, this is a lick. You know,
for sure.
Let me try this guy. It might work, it might not work, but what do I have to lose, right?
Yeah, man. You just learn some of it, just a few words, just to make sure. Like, I listen out for keywords I know when I'm out, so I know, like, you know what I mean? Like, I try to know danger, things to avoid whack scenario, right?
Sure.
You don't want to be in a terrible scenario overseas. We're in another country, you know what I'm saying? We're not in our home nation. We have no protection. As an American, you don't have protection in these nations. It's bullshit if you think that nobody's coming to save you.
F around and find out.
Yeah, the embassy is not coming to save you. So don't think we have diplomatic immunity or they can't touch us because we're American. You will be buried somewhere. And nobody will be looking for you. So be aware. Oh, now I want to ask you what you think about this before we end this. So I've been seeing some things. Guys are saying, like, foreign men in Africa don't have any issue with us coming and taking all their women.
Okay, that's a big change from the main topic.
That's funny though, right?
You said guys say they don't have a problem?
They don't. Like East African men, Kenyan men are like, oh yeah, come take our women. Tanzanian men, come take our women. I've actually seen that in under some videos about Africa.
Okay.
But obviously it's Americans that are saying this that probably have never been to these places.
Yeah.
But what do you think about that rhetoric being pushed as the new narrative?
I don't think that is 100% accurate. I think it is more of the fact that we blend in here.
Yes.
So look at it like this. If you are Puerto Rican and you go to the Dominican Republic and they see you with a Dominican girl, they don't know you're not Dominican. 9 times out of 10. Now, maybe once they hear you speak, yeah, they'll know. But the fact is, they're close enough in phenotype that a lot of them can pass for the other one, right? So they're not, let's say Dominicans were a hating culture. It's really not. But let's say it was, it would be hard to hate on somebody when you can't tell who they are. And it's similar to some points in East Africa that there's so many different tribes, that black people come in so many different, varieties that they can't say for certain that you're not from their country or a neighboring country. So from across the room, when I walk into a room, nobody goes, there's an American who came in here, he's coming to get our girls, right? It doesn't happen like that. They know I'm foreign for sure, but they don't know exactly, you know what I'm saying? They don't know, I could be half whatever, you know what I'm saying? They don't know my backstory, versus when I'm in Japan, they know my black ass is not Japanese, you know what I'm saying? And I'm never gonna be able to pass for Japanese. And that's the same with all over Asia, that's the same with me in Mexico, that's the same in so many non-African places, right? So all of that goes away here. So I think some of that is where guys are getting the perception that the local men in these countries are not ever hating. Now, I won't say most people are hating. I couldn't break it down in percentages, but anywhere that there's competition among men, it's not always going to be welcomed, especially if you're doing it in a loud way, right? You know, if you're doing it low key, then it goes under the radar. But if you're being too loud about it, you're on social media talking about it, anybody rightfully would feel some type of way, you know what I'm saying? Even if they're welcoming people who are not naturally haters, you can push the narrative to the point where that switch will flip. So I just say that to say more or less, like, still be on your P's and Q's, still be respectful, but yes, you will generally get a better shake in these countries as far as issues with the men for being with the local women than you would in some other places.
Now, I didn't have any issues until I started the marriage process. Now that's different because they see your passport, they're gonna ask you questions. When you're a foreigner, they're really gonna grill you. A lot of guys don't know that because when they get married in America. They don't get married in the country the girl's from. So when you get married in the country the girl's from, you'll start to see what they really think. It's a difference if you guys are just having a fling versus you locking it together and building a family, especially if you're doing it in their country, they're gonna question it. Like with me, for example, the pastors and stuff were like, you know, these Americans, divorce is easy for them. Now, he wasn't wrong, and I'm not demonizing, but us being Americans, our divorce being normalized, it is known to a lot of these people in these countries. So they're not so quick to officiate our marriages because they're like, whoa, these guys don't, he might have a whole nother family in America, which is common, you know, people do that. So I get it. It's not them hating us specifically because we're American, but they're protecting their own people.
Sure.
So that's the truth behind it. They're protecting their own.
And one of the things he touched upon is important to know is that American stereotypes go all over the world. Yes. So the good, the bad, and the ugly, you don't get to choose which part of that they're going to assign to you. It's just the luck of the draw. They're going to think, okay, you're American, you earn more than them on average, which is a positive stereotype, but they may also think that you're with some extreme liberal stuff, which you may or may not be with, right? And that's probably not going to be a positive stereotype when someone assumes this kind of thing about you without actually meeting you as a person. That's what a stereotype is in general. It's having the group represent the individual.
Yes.
You know, that's not a perfect definition, but that's more or less what it breaks down to. Yes, there are many Americans who divorce easily, but I'm me. Right. I'm American, but I'm not the sum and the whole of Americans. So don't assign that to me. I can be serious even if they're not. You know, and on and on and on with whatever other stereotypes, being in a gang, being irresponsible, being X, Y, Z, you know, like I said, you don't get to pick and choose which stereotypes they're going to assign to you. And there's so many of them. For Americans, for Black Americans specifically, that you could get hit with any of them, is what I'm trying to say.
It hit me out of nowhere. I wasn't even ready for it. I wasn't ready for that specific stereotype, which it made sense though. It went with what I was doing, getting traditionally married. So it made sense he hit me with that. But yeah, guys, we've been going for a while. Thank you, Jay Focus, for coming up here talking to my audience. Subscribe to his channel, guys. Drops great content weekly in a different place all the time. You'll love his channel.
All right, guys. Once again, this was your man Jay Focus, reminding you to stay focused.
Peace out, guys.
All right, guys. So this is Jackie's salad. You can eat outside, but I prefer to eat inside with the AC. I'm an AC person. That's the security booth, parking area. It's a really nice place. Very nice.
TGI Fridays. They bring you the sizzling joint.
Yeah.
But it cools down quick. Like this one is taking a minute.
All right. So this is my meal. Boy J Focus. Meal looking fire too. You know what I'm saying? We're ready to eat. Chow down. Even got my ice for my drinks. I like them ice cold. I don't do warm drinks. So one last thing about language barrier is very important, especially when dealing with family. Asante, mama. Ivan, enjoy. Yeah, dealing with family. Ivan, Nambi, Nakupenda in English. I don't know if you understand. I love you.
I love you so much.
I love you so much too. But yeah, it helps with family interactions. I wish I spoke more Swahili, but I'm learning. Trying to. Anyway, end of my video. I appreciate you guys.